Hello guys. So in this video, we'll be talking about one topic related to education. So this is the editorial analysis, which I've taken from 14th of August Hindu newspaper editorial. What I'll do is I'll share the screen and then with the help of this PPT, I'll explain that so that it will be very easy. So as you see here, I have taken this topic from 14th of August. So this is the areas that we are actually looking at. Right. So the eroding of academic freedom in universities, that's the title of the editorial, Hindu. And then if you look at the relevance, so firstly, GS paper 2, governance, role of statutory bodies, issues relating to education, government policies, in all these areas, one way or the other, it is connected. Again, if you look at ethics paper, you can connect it with academic integrity, autonomy, values in education. So all these areas are also discussed in this. And then GS paper 1, Indian society part, right? Role of education in social change, intellectual freedom. Now, if you are a sociology student, then this topic is again important for your chapter social change, where there is a topic education and social change, and that's where it's important. Now, coming to essay, they can ask you education policy related question, democracy related question, freedom of thought related question. In all these, you'll get good points from this particular essay. Okay, so I'll be coming back to these. Now, if you look at from prelims angle, UGC Act 1956, related to that, they can ask you questions, and Radhakrishnan Commission, I hope you are aware of that. And then NEP 2020 provisions, the multidisciplinary universities, graded autonomy, research emphasis on these aspects, and then global academic freedom index. Okay, again, if you look at the main side, I've taken a sample question here. With that, we'll be discussing the editorial. So the question is, academic freedom is essential for fostering innovation and critical thinking. Yet, it is under threat in India. Discuss with measures to safeguard it. And all these are actually covered in this. So what you'll do is you'll define academic freedom. We'll be discussing that here as factual background. What is the definition of academic freedom? So and then what you can do is you'll talk about the link with democracy and Article 1911. Okay. And then you'll talk about its importance of innovation, democracy, social reforms. You'll be talking about that. That's there in this editorial. Threats, the political interference, over-regulation, funding control, self-censorship, and then international examples and the best practices. We talk about Japanese model, we talk about European models, and the way forward, the autonomy part, the accountability part, the depoliticized appointments, which is again very important. So the politicization of appointments is again a big problem. So transparent funding. And in conclusion, you can quote UNESCO or Radhakrishnan Commission and stress that the universities build free societies. So these are the angles that we are supposed to cover, and I'll be sharing with you this quick summary also, so with which we'll be completing it. So I hope the idea of this session is very clear. Now, if you guys look at the factual background, okay, so the factual background goes like this. Here, first you need to define the academic freedom. That is, like when we talk about academic freedom, we talk about freedom of teachers, students, and institutions to pursue knowledge without unreasonable interference, censorship, or restriction. So that's a simple definition of academic freedom. Freedom of teachers, freedom of students, and the institutions to pursue knowledge without any unreasonable interferences or kind of censorship or any kind of restriction. Now, when you look at Indian context, historically, our universities enjoyed relative autonomy. So you can talk about examples from the editorial. And then if you look at the recent concerns, the main issues that has been highlighted is the increasing bureaucratic and political interference, and then restrictive regulations from statutory bodies like the UGC, and then administrative control over appointments, its curriculum, and then the research priorities. So all these are the recent concerns which has been discussed in that. Apart from that, you can add your own perspective, your own points also. Now, if you see the main perspective here, or the arguments in editorial, or the author's key concern, if you see, first, he's talking about diminishing autonomy, like centralization of decision making in higher education. So that is diminishing autonomy. And then impact on innovation, like over regulation, that basically affect the critical thinking, or it is affecting creativity, and it ultimately affect the research output. So there is an impact on innovation. And the political interference, like the appointment and funding, which is often influenced by the political considerations. And then there is one more concern which he highlighted is the global standing, like India's declining position among universities in the world rankings, like that is partly due to lack of academic freedom. So India's position in the rank is actually declining. Now, what is asking for, or if you see the call to action, basically ensure institutional autonomy. That means grant or give more autonomy, and then reform regulatory bodies for greater transparency and accountability part, and then protect universities from undue state or political control. So these are the call to action, you can say. And again, there are some other contexts that you can look into if I want to go for a detailed explanation of this. Like you can look at the constitutional and legal framework, you can look at the international benchmarks, and you can look at the current challenges. All these can be incorporated in your answer. So if you look at the constitutional and the legal framework, Article 19 clause 1 subclause A, that's basically related to freedom of speech and expression. That includes academic discourse. That's one dimension. And then the directive principles, if you look at Article 41, 45, 46, they promote education and scientific temper. Okay, and then UGC Act 1956. So that basically regulate and coordinate the standards of higher education. So apart from that, we just mentioned about Radhakrishnan Commission. So that again basically stressing academic freedom as essential for national progress. So these are elements and the dimensions which you can write as the constitutional and legal framework. Fundamental right is there, directive principle is there, act is there, legislation is there, and then the commission is there. Okay, so apart from that, if you have time and space, depending upon the question, if it is in GS, not possible, but if it is an essay, you can start from pre-British time to during British time, Maculum minute and Wood's dispatch, and all these elements you can bring in and you can highlight and you can mention those also. Again, if you look at the international benchmark, so here you can talk about UNESCO recommendation 1997. So academic freedom is very much part of or integral to higher education quality. And then you can also talk about Japanese model of education. You can talk about US model, UK models. So they basically have a greater faculty-led governance, and state interference is very much limited there. So it's mostly faculties are the ones who know what exactly is required, so that the governance part is actually taken care by that. So there is a question of separation of power also, but there it is mostly faculty-led governance and limited state interference in universities and academic aspect. Again, global academic freedom index, if you see what is India's rank, it's very low compared to the developed democracies. Okay, now what are the current challenges? See, firstly, centralized curriculum control. This NEP, NEP 2020 basically proposes autonomy, but implementation part, if you see, that's uneven. And then appointment processes also, like so much of politicized selection of vice chancellors, right? In universities, the VCs are so much of politicized appointments. And then there is a restriction on funding, like a cut in research grants and dependence on government approvals. All these are the funding restrictions we can discuss. And then self-censorship. So like fear of repercussion limits that, uh, basically open academic debates. Okay, so these are elements which you can incorporate in your answer. So I have mentioned all these in the summary also. Now, if I want to give a critical perspective, which means critical view, already the author's view is critical view. I'm saying if you want to give an alternate perspective. So what is author's view? Author's view is over-regulation and interference dilute educational quality. So that's very simple. We are all agree with that. Of course, over-regulation is affecting the educational freedom or academic freedom, that is affecting educational quality. At the same time, interference, state interference or bureaucratic interference or whatever it is, again affecting the academic freedom and of course affecting the educational quality. And we have discussed the other world models also. What the alternate view you can suggest here is, like, some state oversight is very much necessary to maintain the standards. You can also talk about, a separation of power which is required, and it actually help to prevent misuse of funds also, and that will ensure national priorities in research. So that is one dimension which you can bring in. So what you can suggest is a balanced approach, autonomy with accountability. Autonomy should be there, freedom should be there, regulation should be less, but interference should be less, but at the same time accountability should be there. So you give autonomy but with accountability. So that's the point which I want to highlight here towards the end as a balanced approach. So universities should be free in academics but should be subject to like audit and transparent audit, like in terms of finances and its outputs and all those. Okay, so towards the end you can mention this balanced approach is what we are looking for. Like autonomy should be there, but it's not absolute or complete autonomy. Autonomy with accountability. They should be free in academics completely, but they are subject to transparent audit of finances and its outputs and other things, right? So here I've already mentioned about the prelims pointers. You can get into that, and then the mains pointers. Mains question that's we discussed already, I've answered also. So I hope you're done with that editorial. Thank you so much for watching. I see you in the next video.